pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Jeff Renahan, First Ward.
Bill Carlos, Second Ward.
Ann Berger, Third Ward.
Michael Safone, Fourth Ward.
Devon Krakauer, Fifth Ward.
Ann Shershin, Sixth Ward.
Felicia Salvatore, Town Clerk.
Jim Nelson, Attorney for the town.
And Jessica Moran, Deputy Town Clerk.
John Basley, Town Supervisor. Welcome everybody to tonight's meeting. On tonight's agenda, number one item will be to promote Sergeant Wayne Farine to Police Lieutenant. Number two will be a presentation of the code update to the Code Update Committee, a status report. Number three will be authorize the supervisor to sign a low-income household water assistance program vendor agreement. 4, accept the resignation of Mary Beth Rubenstein from the CAC. 5, approve a 9/11 private road name for Southwest Common. 6, authorize a tax search settlement for One Duchess Phase 3. 7, approve the Locust Grove Car Show to be held on July 10th. 8, consent lead agency all space storage expansion. 9, authorized movie production with Buckingham Television, Inc. 10, authorized movie production with Glass Eye Pix, Inc., Crumb Catcher Enterprises. 11, set date for public hearing on property maintenance, 8 Vervin Road. 12, approve Joseph McDonald Bill Crew Memorial Run to be held on June 4th, 2022. 13, approve the Eastdale Car Show to be held on June 5th, 2022 with a rain date of June 12th, 2022. 14th, set date for public hearing on local law, video conferencing technology for meetings, policy for boards and public participant documents. Authorized special consents 1 to 5, SC1, contract with JMC Planning and Hudson Cultural Services, RE Poughkeepsie Day School. SC2, authorize a stop DWI contract with the county. SC3, approve a block party on James Street. SC4, a block party on Van Wagner Road. And SC5, a liquor license notification for the Mystery Room at 2001 South Road. With that, I'd like to make a motion to open for public comment on any item on the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Would anybody like to make public comment? Doreen, go ahead.
Thank you, Jay. I'd like to make a comment about the tax cert for One Duchess Phase 3. So I'm assuming that right now that property is vacant land because they haven't started that portion of the project yet. And their assessment was $900,000 for the 3 parcels in total. And now it's going down about 40% to about $525,000. So just want to say that I hope that when they start their construction on the project, which according to an application they put in with the Dutchess County IDA, they're expecting to start construction on that particular part of the site in, it said May of 2022 and finish it in May of 2024. The reason they're on the IDA agenda is that they're asking for sales tax exemptions and mortgage tax exemptions, close to $2 million total. So the point is I can see that if it's being reduced now because it's vacant property, just hope that when they start their building that they get reassessed. The other question I had, and I'm not sure if at the end, I did look at around 4:30 or so. Thank you. The agenda and packet was updated, and there was information out there for agenda item number 2, the code status report. And I did have some questions on that, maybe after Mr. Welty's report. If not, at the end, you can answer some questions. And the only other thing I had was about the SC1, the contract with the planning for the potential move to the Poughkeepsie Day School, as far as the traffic analysis. So there were a couple of different times on there where they're going to be doing counts and analysis. And like Spackenkill and Boardman Road, it said 4 to 6 p.m. and another one said over Rocker and Tucker 3 to 5, and there was one other time also. So I just wondered about the consistency of the analysis when you're doing the traffic counts, and also the fact that maybe take into account that the schools over there, like particularly Lourdes, they start getting out at around 2 o'clock, between 2 and 2:30. That's also a high traffic time there. So again, I'm not sure exactly what the hours are going to be, but I think they need to be consistent, and the school dismissal times would need to be taken into account. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen. Is there anybody else that would like to make comment on any item on the agenda?
Anybody else want to speak about agenda items? I see no one.
Somebody's trying to talk.
Amelia, are you trying to speak?
She's muted.
You have to unmute yourself if you can.
Can you? There you
There you
go.
go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Now
can.
we can hear you.
All right, just to help myself, I used to be on the planning board in Sussex, New Jersey. My throat is sore. Anyhow, the item I'm interested in is, I don't know, are you referring to property maintenance, 8 Berlin Road?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I've been in touch with your office many times, including last year, and there was a lot of stuff going on. The problem is that I find out that this place has to be abandoned. No one would keep their place looking like this. I have asked the board to come and take a look at what's going on. Now we have, she said, is the grass as high at 14 inches or something like that? I said it's high as a baby's elephant's hide. It's on top of last year's growth. It's going up this way. I'm afraid it's going to eat us. It's a bad look for the neighborhood. Bergen Road is a very short road, and you can very easily change your mind in a wink. So if we're planning to sell our home, we certainly wouldn't like the ugliness around it. At one point, it has to become a town problem.
Amelia, when we have this is a set date for public hearing for probably 2 weeks from now. Once we set the date for a public hearing, if they do not...
Okay, so
No.
I'm early.
No, I'm just going to explain it to you. This is when they come
Okay.
to a public hearing in 2 weeks. If they don't come and if they haven't corrected the problem, we will send somebody out, a landscaper, to correct the problem as far as mowing the lawn and then put it on their tax bill.
Yeah,
That's
it
what comes down
really
to.
looks terrible.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining because someone hasn't mowed their lawn in 3 weeks.
Yeah, no, we'll go out and
Okay.
we'll look at it. This is the start of the process.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much.
You're welcome. Is there anybody else?
Anybody else?
If not, motion to resume rules.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Renahan?
Be it resolved that the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie does hereby authorize the promotion of Sergeant Wayne Farine to the permanent position of police lieutenant at the yearly salary of $124,926.12, subject to a probationary period of not less than 8 nor more than 26 weeks per civil service law, effective May 30th, 2022. And be it further resolved that the town supervisor is authorized to execute and file all documentation required by the Dutchess County Department of Human Resources in connection with this appointment. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Congratulations, Lieutenant.
For years, nothing happened. When I made sergeant.
Brings us to item number 2. Mr. Welty?
Look at the crowd you have now. How do you follow that, huh?
Must be something you said.
I think so. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to, it's not about item 2, but Doreen's comment about the JMC traffic consulting is well taken. There are some specifics in the proposal that I will work with them on that I intend to work, already intended to work with them on, including some of the things that she brought up. But I think in general the idea is the same. We wanted to do the traffic counts for and the traffic, look at the traffic related to the project. Tonight I wanted to take a few minutes to just update you on some of the work of the Code Update Committee. If you recall, back in October of last year, the town board adopted the comprehensive plan update after quite a lot of work over 3 years that we all put into that process. Among the things that we are doing now to implement the plan is starting work on the code update. And as you know, in February, the board appointed a committee, code update committee, includes Jeff Renahan, Carl Whitehead from the Planning Board, and Paul Leahy from the Zoning Board of Appeals to work on this effort. We also, at that time, hired Four Corners Planning, Michelle Grieg, who's the person who owns and operates that firm, and Lisa Cobb to work with us. And so since that time, we've been getting ourselves moving on some of the code work. We have a working group of the consultants that I just mentioned and staff, which is myself, Chrissy from the zoning department, Eric and Kristen from the planning department. We've been meeting weekly starting at the beginning of March, and we've been meeting with the committee approximately once a month. In fact, we had our third meeting today. So basically the working group is kind of doing the digging through, samples from other places and pulling together the text, and then we bring it to the committee. The committee talks about it, we make changes, and we go forward. And that's the process that we've been working under. And then ultimately, of course, this is all yours, right? The code is the town board's to adopt and change and so forth. And so periodically, it's our intention to come to the town board and give you updates on what we're doing. And in some instances also, go through and spend some time talking about some of the proposed changes. So that's why I'm here tonight. I want to give you just a little more about our process, a little more information about our process. There's a lot to tackle. I mean, quite honestly, any one of us, I think if you look at our code, there's just like any code. It's not that ours is particularly bad or deficient. But there's always things that you want to change. There's things that have come along in recent years that were never contemplated, 12 years ago, and so on. And so we do have a lot that we want to tackle, but we're trying to figure out how to organize that work so that, we can get things done, and in a kind of a well thought out way. And so what we're starting with in our first phase are emerging land uses, or maybe, if you want to call them hot button issues, right? Things that we know have been on people's mind for a while that we know we needed to update, and we're focusing on them first. Some of those things were actually specified in the comprehensive plan update. We had listed a few of them: indoor and outdoor recreation, camping, glamping, and agritourism related land uses, short-term rentals, telecommunications facilities, large-scale energy battery storage facilities. Those were things that were examples in the comprehensive plan. And then there's a number of other items that we collectively as a group, know that we need to get to that we haven't really dealt with in a number of years. Something like cannabis, right? A year ago wasn't really on our radar, but now guess what? It is. Food trucks, outdoor music, tattoo parlors, dog and cat daycare and grooming, EV charging stations, food trucks, brewing and distilling. These are all things that we've known that we need to account for somewhere in our code, and we just haven't had an opportunity to do it until now. And so that's what we're doing. In future phases, we're going to continue to be guided by the comprehensive plan. There are suggestions, for example, in the comprehensive plan about creating some locations for redevelopment opportunities, like over at the Duchess Plaza or the South Hill Center. And so we want to work on zoning for those areas. We have a lot of general cleanup to do as well, just improvements to the code to make it all function, work better for the various boards. So, that will come as well. But our progress to date, again, has been focusing on the emerging land uses. A couple items that you've already been looking at, right, were the tattoo parlor and the outdoor music regulations that you had on the agenda over the last few weeks. I believe your next meeting, June 1st, there'll be public hearings actually on both. Those were items that had, I think, the town board's recommendation, we just kind of bumped up, took care of them right at the beginning, plus they weren't too difficult to address. Outdoor music a little bit more so than tattoo parlors, but in any case, we had ideas about what we wanted to do there. There are two items I'm going to talk a little bit more about tonight. Basically just introduce them tonight. We're not doing anything with them. We're not taking any action at this point, but those are short-term rentals and EV charging stations. I'll come back to those in a moment. And just so you know, up next, things that we're actively working on already, but we're not ready to share yet, are the food trucks. We're very close, and some related code modifications for things like events that I know the town clerk has asked us to take a look at. Wireless telecommunications. You know that several of the boards have been dealing with applications over the last few months, and we know we need to update our regulations related to that. Cannabis is another one that we're working on, kind of finding out where the state's going so that we can develop our regulations accordingly. So those are all in progress. But tonight I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the two items I mentioned, short-term rentals and EV charging stations. I did just hand out at the beginning of the meeting for the short-term rentals actually a little bit of a cover memo, because there's a little bit more to it. So you can take that and read it on, at your leisure, and a first draft of our local law related to short-term rentals. I'll talk about that in a minute, and a draft of a local law for EV charging stations. So again, tonight, just giving you a little introduction to them. Not expecting anyone, obviously, to have read them because I just handed them out. But over the next couple of weeks, it would be nice if board members could take a look at them. Let us know, us being the Code Update Committee. You can send it through me. It's probably the easiest thing to do. But let us know if you have any questions, concerns, suggestions. And when we feel like, we've gotten some feedback on them, perhaps made some changes as a result, then we can come back and we can actually start whatever, the formal process, which is usually setting a public hearing and doing all of that so that we get the public input, getting the planning board recommendation, the county recommendation, and so on, that we have to do every time we change the code, right? So for short-term rentals, this is, for those that aren't familiar, we're talking about Airbnbs, HomeAways, all of those kinds of things. This is, it's been a growing industry, here, not just here in the town, but throughout the Hudson Valley and the country as a whole, actually worldwide. And it has a lot to offer, right? It does provide some additional income to property owners. It does diversify lodging opportunities in an area like the Hudson Valley where there's quite a bit of tourism. But it also brings with it some issues, some concerns. It has impacts on neighborhoods. Potentially, having transient renters can create issues in terms of quality of life. It has impacts potentially on housing availability, taking away otherwise affordable units by decreasing the supply and having increasing rents. So for those reasons, a lot of communities have adopted regulations to address short-term rentals. We've been talking about doing so for a couple of years now. And we've, finally now had the opportunity to really focus in on it and develop something, again, a starter piece of legislation for you to look at. A couple things I want to point out about the proposed law. Again, you'll have more time to read it and digest it after tonight, but the most important single element of the law is that it restricts short-term rentals to a person's primary residence. All right, so it has to be the place where you live, at least 6 months of your life. There's ways that we check on where your primary residence is as opposed to your secondary residence, right? So it's a pretty easy standard to confirm, but it's a really important piece of this. There's a new chapter that's being created in the code for short-term rentals. It would be chapter 168.1. Again, it would limit to primary residence. There would be a distinction made between a hosted short-term rental, right, where somebody is there while you're renting your room or rooms, versus an unhosted short-term rental where basically there's nobody in the location while you're there. There are requirements for making sure that somebody's available nearby if there should be an issue. It creates an annual permit process through the zoning department. Has information about the kind of, what we need in an application. It creates a permit with various conditions and restrictions. It includes criteria for the denial of an application or for the revocation of a permit if people are, after getting a permit, are not meeting their obligations under the permit. There's an appeals process that actually would come through the town board, and there's provisions for enforcement. There are related changes or amendments to the zoning code, chapter 210. Primarily they talk about where these short-term rentals are allowed and where they're not, right? So for example, we've said if it's a hosted rental, that means the person is there with you, then it could go in any single-family dwelling in any zoning district. But if it's unhosted, it could not go in the R20 unless there's a parcel of a certain size or dimension where the home is far away from its neighbors. So there's some, that was our first cut at what we thought made sense. And so I encourage you that the memo that we provided was meant to just give you kind of a little bit more of an in-detail summary of what's in the code for those of you who, as you start to read it, it might help clarify some things. I want to talk a little bit about enforcement too, because as you can imagine, enforcement is a tricky issue. We're not unaware that there are these units currently in the town. We have had it, because of a lack of any specificity in our code about them, it's very difficult to effectively enforce without having these regulations in place. But enforcement is, once we do put regulations in place, eventually, when you're ready to do so, is a tricky business because these places advertise on as many as 24 different platforms now. Airbnb probably the most well known, but there's a whole bunch of them that are out there. We're not the only ones with this problem. As we've done our research on this, we reached out to the county. Dutchess County Planning certainly has done a fair amount of work on this with some other communities in the county where they have a lot of these already. Rhinebeck and Beacon are the two most populated in terms of Airbnb. And they also have issues tracking these because they want to collect their hotel tax or whatever it's called, the lodging tax, right? And so they've been working now for a few years with a company that does, called Granicus, that does host compliance software, basically that monitors all of the different sites that do short-term rentals and helps the county identify where they are so that they can be effective collectors of that tax. That same software can be used by communities like ours, and is being used by communities like ours, to help keep track of where these are, so that we can, both communicate to the owners, the people who operate the short-term rentals, and let them know that these rules, for example, are going in place, but also to enforce, to keep track and make sure that people who are making their homes available for these rentals are in fact permitted by the town and are following the requirements that the town sets out. So one of the things we're going to be looking to do is initiating a contract with Granicus to acquire the software. What's nice is the county, because again they already work with Granicus, and on other communities have also needed this software to help administer their own local laws, the county will reimburse us for up to $5,000 of that cost annually. And at least initially, what it looks like is our cost would be less than that $5,000. So we should be able to recoup basically all of the software cost through that agreement with the county once we have our local law in place. So I want to make you, just put that out there. I think it would be of extremely useful for the zoning department to be able to have that to track this if we're going to go ahead and actually regulate these uses. Finally, our intent would be, depending on how quickly the board feels comfortable with the regulations, once they're adopted, ideally we would be in a position that we would be able to have them go into effect as of January 1st, let's say, of next year. Then give us some time to, again, using that software, let the existing short-term rentals in the community know that the regulations are coming into place. Here's how here's what you need to do in order to become a permitted STR in our community. So we'll see if that timeline continues to make sense, but that was our initial thought on that. I'm going to just quickly pivot then. Oh, I hate that term. Sorry. I'm going to switch over to talk about overused. The EV charging really quick. A little less complicated, but just this is something that, again, was talked about in the comprehensive plan as something that we needed to have. We've seen a few instances now where both proposed projects and existing businesses have come to us and want to put in EV chargers, right, which is great. We support that, and we try to make the process as simple as we can for that to happen. But we haven't had any actual regulations in place, either to be clear about what's needed, or to, for example, when we have new development proposed, say, well, we need you to be thinking about this for the future. And so this particular local law is a little bit more straightforward. It amends the zoning chapter. It creates a set of definitions about EV charging and EV charging stations. It makes the higher level chargers, the ones that are kind of more typical of like a commercial establishment or an apartment complex, makes those subject to site plan review. It establishes some design criteria, which are important because we've already learned that there's a lot of different types of EV chargers out there. Some of them have business models, for example, that are more focused on advertising as a way of offsetting costs as opposed to just charging the cars. We didn't think that was a particularly great model, and so we have some design criteria in there as well, and it does set some requirements for future proposals for multifamily residences and for commercial development, including a provision in there that would allow the planning board during site plan approval, if it really doesn't make sense right now, to at least say, well, if you can't put the chargers in now, or if it really doesn't work it now, you at least have to get the conduit and get the infrastructure in place for the future, so that when you do eventually come around and need to put the EV chargers in, you don't have to rip up the parking lot and redo everything again. So I think presents a very reasonable approach. I think most places are finding, what we're finding anyway, is that some of the big projects, Eastdale, Hudson Heritage, and so on, they want to incorporate EV chargers. They have been incorporating EV chargers into their projects. We're actually going to have quite a number of them out at Eastdale in the not too distant future, which is kind of exciting. But Hudson Heritage has some as well, and we expect that that's going to become a regular part of most of the projects that we see going forward. So that's what the EV charges legislation is about. Again, take your time, look through both. I expect some of you will have questions in particular about the short-term rentals. I will tell you that the one last thing about the short-term rentals piece is that the requirement to have the primary residence be only as a short-term rental is likely to be something that we hear some comments about when we do have our public hearings. I will tell you that of the short-term rentals that we currently have operating in the town, probably the majority of them right now are not primary residents. All right, so this would make them not able to continue. But there are very good reasons for that, and I think we can have conversations about that when the time comes. But when we did review this proposed local law with Granicus, the company that has the software, they have an expert that they have that works with municipalities around the country developing regulations like this and reviewing regulations like this, and they made that person available to us for nothing. So we developed our regulation, and then we sent it to them, and we had about an hour-long meeting with this person to kind of see how we did, compared to, I mean, this guy knows what everyone's doing all across the country. And he really thought we did a very good job. There were a few things that, we did tweak based on his recommendations. And the issue of primary residence was, in his opinion, the most important. And he said a lot of communities, even communities that, were on the short-term rental bandwagon several years ago already, if they weren't already, they're moving towards having a requirement that these be primary residences because of the issues they sometimes face when things get out of hand, when they're not primary residences. So he thought that was a really good and the right way to go. Just wanted to make you aware of that. We really have tried to do our homework, and hopefully, if you have any questions, you'll let us know.
So, Michael, the primary residence requirement basically would just about cut them out completely in the town of Poughkeepsie right now, right?
Not all of them. There are hosted. There are folks that do short-term rentals now in a home that they live in as a hosted home. There are also some that people who go away for part of the year, like in the summer they're going away for a month or two or something like that, and they want to rent their home, and they're still their primary residence. So it wouldn't eliminate all of them, but it would eliminate the majority of them currently. Yes.
Just out of curiosity, so what is a primary residence defined as? And so if I have my house and it's my primary residence, and I'm retired and I spend 360 days of the year in Florida, does that fall into that category? How is a primary residence defined?
Because you think about it as your ability to vote in a place, right?
Right, but
so there's a certain requirement. It has to be your primary residence to vote in
If
the
you're
national election.
360 days a year in Florida, you're not a primary
You're not a
resident.
primary resident.
you are. If residence is subjective.
Well,
If I'm in Florida, let's say I'm not retired.
Mm-hmm.
I work for IBM and I'm on a project and I work 6 days a week down in Florida and I'm back 1 day a week.
yeah.
Or 6 months, 8 months a year. And so how do you define primary residence?
Well, the definition is on page 2 of the law. I'll just read it for you for now. It's not very long. The domicile and principal dwelling that a person inhabits and resides in for the majority of the year. If title to the property is not held in the name of a natural person, then the following shall apply. If the property is held in the name of a trust, the person that inhabits the residence must be a grantor or a beneficiary of the trust. If the property is held by an entity other than a trust, corporation, limited liability company, partnership, etc., the resident must be a majority owner of the entity. The timeline for primary residence, again, is pretty well established, I think, for other things here in the community. Like I said, voting is one that I just can come to mind. So we would use that same mechanism.
And I'm not arguing for or against it. I'm just kind of asking a question. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I do think in order to make it enforceable, we'd probably have to more specifically define what primary residence is, because there's a subjective part of residency. So I just think we probably have to have a very objective criteria.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay,
like I said, I'm not saying I'm for or against
Yep.
doing this. I was just asking the question. So.
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, that's the kind of thing that we're going to want to get, more of those kinds of questions. Yeah.
Mike, I'm sure it's covered, but I just want to make sure. There should be significant protections in our residential neighborhoods. If the person next door to me decides they want to rent it out,
Mm-hmm.
what protection is it for the rest of the people in the area? We've all had the music complaints. We've all had the party complaints.
Right.
We've all seen some horrific things go on in this town. I have.
Mm-hmm.
That in a neighborhood that's got regular, normal people living there is going to cause a problem. I have no position with respect to renting their house and not renting it as their house. They can do what they want. But there has to be some protections for the community.
Yep.
Strong enough, pull the permit and tell the people to get out.
So again, I mean, I know I just dropped it off on your desk this evening. I encourage you to read through it, take a look at it, tell me what you think. That's the reason why we wrote it, was so there are some protections. There's a permit that can be revoked. There are specific requirements about what you can't have bachelorette and wedding parties and things like that at your rental. I mean, there's a lot in there. It's all intended to really address those issues. So take a look at it and let me know if there's something
Second
missing.
point,
Yeah.
who's going to do the enforcement?
Again, the zoning administrator would be ultimately responsible.
So Saturday at 3 o'clock in the
No,
morning?
the noise ordinance still exists. The police would have to do that. Yeah.
Suppose it's not the noise ordinance.
Well, if in this case, actually, the building, let me just get back to that. I don't remember if we specified the police or not.
No, you have building, zoning.
We have building and
or
zoning.
anybody
And that's where,
else.
that's
That
where
could
it should
be- that could
be.
be a
This
thing.
should not be in the police.
Yeah.
Okay, the police have a whole different function than zoning and planning, and since we're doing this, that enforcement part has to be available through the weekends, on Christmas, on the holidays. We can't allow something that's disruptive to a neighborhood to continue, and I would be adamantly opposed to tying the police into this. This is clearly administrative by the town. So, how do we do that?
Yeah.
Are we gonna have an inspector we're gonna call out?
Probably not currently, but we could talk about that. One thing I didn't mention before, one of the services that Granicus supplies is a what they call a 24/7 hotline. So obviously, if you were to call the zoning department, Saturday evening, you're not going to find anybody there. That could be very frustrating. I would imagine if somebody had a complaint. And so the purpose of the 24/7 hotline is that somebody can actually answer the phone, take the complaint, record the complaint, so that Monday morning there's something to actually be followed up on.
That, Mike, that's
Yeah.
exactly.
So here's a question.
That's exactly where I'm putting my finger.
Good.
I've been a cop in this town.
Mhm.
I've seen those parties. I've seen that happen.
Mhm.
The impact to the immediate neighbors is significant. For me to support this law, we're going to have an enforcement action, not the police.
No, Bill, you're wrong. Noise ordinance, if you're saying, you're talking party, that's a police action. That's a noise ordinance action.
Just like
Yep.
you always
This is
were.
an enforcement
To
action.
have a noise ordinance, you got to have noise.
Well,
If there's no noise, if there's 30 people in the house, that's too much. 40 people in the house.
Yep.
That has to be dealt with then. And since we're doing it administratively to allow these things to happen,
Yeah.
it's not a police action.
I mean, I'm not sending an unarmed zoning enforcement officer to a house party to break it up. Sorry, we're not doing that. It's going to be the police anyway in that situation.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Here's the thing.
I asked you, is there going to be 24-hour enforcement?
Yes,
And we have the ability
We have
to
the
pull a
hotline.
permit. And we have the ability to pull a permit.
right.
So if there are 15 people at this house, no noise, bunch of cars, 15, 16 people at the house, and the neighbor calls and says there's 15 people staying in the house next door,
Nothing's gonna happen until Monday morning.
Nothing's going to happen until Monday morning.
so that's going to have, for me to address this, or to me to support it, there's going to have to be a way for that enforcement to happen. I'm not talking about noise ordinance, I'm not talking about drugs or alcohol, those are all clearly police functions. I'm talking about the abuse of the short-term rental. And that's our function.
Yeah.
And there's got to be a way. So if it's next to my house and there are 15 people there living there on the weekend,
Yep.
maybe they're throwing a little garbage around, but they're not noisy. They're sitting in the backyard drinking whatever they're doing. That impacts that neighborhood. And if it's something like that, there has to be an action in there where maybe our building inspector, whoever it is, gets up out of bed and goes down there and pulls the permit.
This is interesting. I mean, let's talk more
Well,
about
let
this.
me just say one thing.
Interesting.
It sounds like Bill thinks it's going to be some wild party at all these short-term rentals. I just did a short-term rental, and they have policies themselves. I mean, what differentiates a short-term rental from you having 15 people over your house having a party? I mean, the same
I'm not going to
enforcement.
let them get out of control.
Well, the thing is,
So,
But the
can I-
thing is, the police still have to enforce whatever happens.
Yeah.
And the thing is we had rules at our short-term rental we had it, and if there was any problem there that involved any, police or loud noises, so and so, they throw you out and they take your money. That's what they do. So the thing is
Who does?
the owner does. The owner will sit there and throw you out, and they take your money
Yeah.
from you.
Well, but here's
Can I
But
just,
I mean, you're making it sound like that.
I just want to,
find out though.
hold on one second.
Everybody, hold on
Where's
one
the
second.
gavel?
One second.
Everybody, please, before we sit here tonight and pick this apart, take it home.
And read it,
Please
read it. That would
read
be
it,
good.
and then reach out with your comments. We are not here to go through this whole thing tonight.
No.
Please take it home.
I'm not
This is
asking you to do anything with
present
it tonight.
Nobody's even read
read
it to play early morning quarterback. Please take it home, read it. We can all meet, we can meet with Mike on one-on-ones, we get this together, to sit here and say what we need and what we want. Go through it and pick out and see what it says, and then pick out what you want in it, and then reach out to Mike.
Thank
Instead of just keep rolling this back
Because
and
the bottom
forth.
line is these things are happening already. It's-
They are,
it's-
and,
We're just trying to put some
we're now trying to put some
guardrails
rules in
on it.
place.
We're not here as a committee to hold to go through it. Nobody- I don't think anybody here has read
Just
it.
to mention one other thing, the importance of the primary residency, I mentioned it before without getting into the specifics of it, but the main reason for that, again, is to this concern, you want the people who are doing short-term rentals to be responsible entities, right? People who have a stake in the community and in their home. And so the primary, having it as a primary residence instead of as, an investment property, you have 10 of these things and you don't really care, is a really big deterrent to the kind of thing that you're talking about. Can something still go wrong? Sure. Nothing is perfect. But that's why we think it's really, really important that primary residence be one of the most important criteria in the law.
There
But I
are
want
big
you to read it, and
LLCs
we'll
that
talk
are
about it.
buying up homes
Yeah.
and doing
Yeah.
just this.
Yeah.
There's
And
seven-
that's-
Primary residence would be a limiting factor because you can only have one
Correct.
in town. But it's not necessarily deterrent. The thing I'd ask or suggest, maybe Jay and Mike, is could we do maybe some breakout sessions with smaller groups of the board to go through this offline as it's getting done? Because it's good to have it at the board meetings, but like there's more drilling down in the detail. It might be helpful if three of, what do we can have, three of us at a time meet with Mike to review.
This was just to present it to us tonight. This wasn't to have a
No,
discussion.
but that's what I'm saying, like the hashing out the details, for those of us who want to hash out more details, if Mike gives us, some dates, we can have.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely available, Stefan, I'm always available, and I'm happy to do that.
No, I know, but I'm just suggesting it as chunks of this come due, send an email to the board and say, we would like to have a breakout session to discuss this, and then we can chime in so that we're not hashing it out as you're presenting it. Because the presentation of the board is good for us, but it's also good for the public.
Yeah.
You keep from too much of the minutia, we have some breakout sessions to talk about it in more detail.
Gotcha, okay.
All right.
Thank you, Mike.
Is that Mike?
Can I toss in one thing too quick? What happens if we have like historic sites that would be interested in becoming Airbnbs, like a Locust Grove or a Kimmerer Cider Mill? Is there any consideration to that if it's owned by a society or another group? Or is it just, that's forbidden?
If it's not a single-family residence, it would not be, it would not fit in here. Could we talk, there could be an inn or a bed and breakfast type of, commercial use for something like that, perhaps, but it's not, it wouldn't be in this bucket, it wouldn't be in the short-term rental.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
thank you.
And I did attach it to an email if you're away or anything like that. The full thing, if you want to read it, in the most latest email I sent today.
Okay. Mr. Carlos.
Yes.
Number 3?
Number 3.
Yes, Mike, I have a question. Is it all right to ask some questions here?
No, this is the board comment. We're past a couple comment. You can ask at the very end. This is-
At the very end,
Yeah, this-
okay.
This is just a board comment.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Resolution number 3. Whereas the state of New York has implemented a low-income household water assistance program, LIHWAP, funded by a federal block grant and the American Rescue Plan Act to help income-qualified residents pay past due water bills and sewer bills, which program will be administered by the New York State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance. And whereas in order for the eligible town resident to participate, the town must execute a LIHWAP vendor agreement. Now therefore be it resolved that the supervisor or his designee is authorized to execute an LIHWAP vendor agreement, as well as all the term sheets and forms necessary to qualify town residents to participate in the program. So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Any questions? Just so everybody knows, this is a program that sort of runs for water bills along the same parameters that HEAP does. They apply and the state pays the bill. And they're allowed up to $5,000 between water and sewer bills. And it can be multiple times. They have to apply every time. All we're doing is accepting it and the check comes to us. We don't do any of the paperwork.
Great.
It's a win. Yes, yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Number 4, be it resolved that the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie does hereby accept with regret the resignation of Mary Beth Rubenstein from the town of Poughkeepsie Conservation Advisory Commission, effective immediately. So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any questions?
Didn't we just appoint her recently?
Reappoint, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is she moving or?
No, she's not moving. She's overcommitted, so she has to resign.
Okay.
Okay?
All
And
those-
also, I want to point out to the board that currently the CAC has vacancies in the 2nd and the 4th wards.
Yeah, I'm working on the 4th ward.
I'm working on the second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Number 5, be it resolved, Town Board, Town of Poughkeepsie is hereby approve the private road name for identification purposes only for the project known as South Hills Common, partial grid number 6158-01-261673, as follows. 1, South Hills Way. And be it further resolved, upon the adoption of this resolution, said resolution shall be sent to the 9/11 facilities for Dutchess County by the town clerk of the town of Poughkeepsie. So moved.
Second.
The motion is second. Any questions on this one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Be it resolved, the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie does hereby authorize the settlement of the tax certiorari proceedings instituted by One Dutchess Phase 3 LLC for properties known as Building 1, One Dutchess Avenue, 6062-02-781496, Building J, One Dutchess Avenue, 6062-02-768525, and Building K, One Dutchess Avenue, 6062-03-755495, for the 2021 tax assessment roll as shown on the attached consent order and judgments. Be it further resolved, the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie does hereby authorize the supervisor or his designee town assessor Jennifer Mund and Kyle Burnett of Vanderwater and Vanderwater LLP to sign such papers as are necessary to effectuate said settlement. So moved.
Second.
The motion is second. Any questions? Well, I'll just make a comment. This was one parcel a few years back, and the parcel was assessed at $214,000. And when it broke up, they got assessed a total of like $900,000, where now she rolled it back to $525,000. So with the year in between, it is actually more than what it was 3 years ago. And then once they start building on it, because right now it's primary undeveloped land, once they start building on it, they'll go right back up. So probably there for just a year or so till it starts going back up again.
And this is a property on the waterfront, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it was one lot, and they subdivided it to put the buildings on it. So when it got subdivided to 3 lots, she assessed them at a higher number, and they came back, because originally it was assessed at $214,000 for all 3. And now, even with the reduction, a year later, it's assessed at $525,000 for the 3 lots now.
Okay.
So we did come out ahead. She was just a little high, not knowing it was undeveloped at that point. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Motion
Nay.
passes 6-1.
Be it resolved that the town board of the town of Poughkeepsie does hereby approve the application submitted by Locust Grove Estate, the Young and Morris Historic Site, to hold a car show on Saturday, July 10th, 2020, on the site of Locust Grove, 2683 South Road, Poughkeepsie, New York, and be further resolved that a certificate of liability insurance naming the town of Poughkeepsie as an additional insured has been filed in the town clerk's office. So moved.
Second. Motion is second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Be it resolved, the town of Poughkeepsie, town board of town of Poughkeepsie is hereby consent to town of Poughkeepsie Planning Board acting as a secret lead agency. Notice of intent paperwork in its entirety can be found in the town clerk's office for a project known as All Space Self-Storage Facility Expansion, location of which can be found in the planning board notice attached here to, dated May 3rd, 2022. So moved.
Second.
Second.
Got a motion second. Any question on that one? All those in
Jay,
favor?
I don't have it attached. All I have is the resolution.
That's all you have. It says right on the resolution that the full thing is in my office.
Okay.
If you'd like to read it, I have it here.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Be it resolved that the Town Board, Town of Poughkeepsie, does hereby authorize the supervisor or his designee to execute a movie/video production activity agreement in substantially the form annexed, allowing Buckingham Television, Inc. to conduct movie productions between south of Sheaf Road and Strawberry Hill Road, and between north of Bowden Park and Delaware Avenue in the Town of Poughkeepsie on May 23rd, 2022, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., and on such other dates as are specifically allowed on consent of the town supervisor, and does hereby authorize the Town of Poughkeepsie Police Department and other departments, subject to their standard policies, procedures, and charges, to provide traffic control and other assistance to Buckingham, subject to Buckingham executing and complying with the terms of the production activity agreement annexed, and be it further resolved that the supervisor, after consultation with the involved department heads and attorneys to the town, is authorized to execute other movie/video production activity agreements on terms which are substantially consistent with the annexed production activity agreement, and be it further resolved that the town board determines that the execution of the annex and future movie/video production activity agreement is a type 2 action requiring no environmental review because it involves the ongoing administration and management of town affairs which do not include new programs or a major rendering of priorities that may have a significant adverse effect on the environment. So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Resolution number 10. Be it resolved pursuant to the authority this day granted to the supervisor by Resolution 5:18-9 of 2022, the town board confirms the supervisor's authority to execute a movie video production activity agreement in substantially the form annexed with Glass Eye Pix, Inc., Crumb Catcher Enterprises, Inc., to conduct a movie production at about 241 Sheaf Road and 85 Sheaf Road in the town of Poughkeepsie on June 13th and 14th, 2022, between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m., subject to compliance with the conditions in the agreement and subject to the provisions of Resolution 5:18, number 9 of 2022. So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any questions on this one? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Number 11, whereas an order to remedy, a copy of which is attached hereto, has been issued for property located at 8 Vervin Road, Town of Poughkeepsie, State of New York, pursuant to Chapter 159A-4, mowing of the Town of Poughkeepsie Town Code. And whereas said order to remedy has not been complied with, now therefore be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby set the 15th day of June 2022 at 7 p.m. at the Town Hall, Town of Poughkeepsie, 1 out over Rocker Road, Poughkeepsie, New York, as and for the time, date, and place of a public hearing to consider a recommendation from the zoning administrator that the town or its contractor remove and, as needed, continue to remove all garden waste, fallen tree limbs, and cut the grass to a height not to exceed 12 inches. All of the above property, so it will not become overgrown and unsightly. The cost of which work shall constitute a lien and charge on the above real property until paid, satisfied, or discharged, and shall be collected in the same manner as other town charges. So moved.
Second. We have a motion second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Be resolved, Town Board, Town of Poughkeepsie has heretofore received an application from Mark Sanfilippo on behalf of the Mid-Hudson Roadrunners Club to hold the annual Joseph McDonald Bill Cruzy Memorial Run to be held on Saturday, June 4th, 2022. Be it further resolved, the Town Board, Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby approve the application for said run, and that the town clerk is in the receipt of a certificate of liability insurance naming the Town of Poughkeepsie as an additional insured. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Be resolved, the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby approve the application submitted by Shelby Adrian on behalf of Eastdale Village and Premier Cares Foundation to hold a car show on Sunday, June 5, 2022, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. with a rain date of Sunday, June 12, 2022, at Eastdale Village, 48 Eastdale Avenue N, Poughkeepsie, New York, and be it further resolved that the certificate of liability insurance naming the town of Poughkeepsie as an additional insured has been filed with the town clerk's office. So moved.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any questions on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Yeah, Jay, I don't have a copy of number 14.
Okay, read it. I got it. Be it resolved, the Town Board of Town of Poughkeepsie is hereby set the first day of June 2022, 7 p.m., Town Hall, Town of Poughkeepsie, 1 Over Rock Road, Poughkeepsie, New York, as and for the time, date, and place of a public hearing to adopt by local law Town Code Chapter 2A entitled Local Law Authorizing Certain Uses of Video Conferencing Technology, and to separately consider and adopt by resolution a video conferencing and public participation policy and procedures. Be it further resolved, proposed local law is attached here to as Exhibit A incorporated herein. The Town Board does hereby waive a verbatim reading of said proposed law and does direct that it be spread across the record as if it had been read verbatim. Be it further resolved that after reviewing the proposed local law, this board determines the adoption of it as a Type 2 action under SEQA requiring no environmental review because of part of the ongoing administration and management of the town will not affect the major ordering of priorities which might result in a significant adverse environmental impact. Be it further resolved that said local law, if adopted, shall take effect immediately upon filing with the Secretary of State with the policy be simultaneously effective. So moved.
Second.
Got a motion second. Any questions on this one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
6-0. Bill stepped out for a minute.
Oh, I didn't know it was one. Motion passes 6-0.
Me?
Yeah,
Okay.
number 4.
Be resolved, the Town Board of Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby grant special consent to the following items to wit. 1, authorize supervisor to sign contracts with JMC Planning and Hudson Cultural Services regarding Poughkeepsie Day School. 2, authorize supervisor to sign 2022 Stop DWI contract with county. 3, town clerk approve block party James Street. 4, town clerk approve block party Van Wagner Road. Number 5, notification town clerk liquor license Mystery Room LLC, 2001 South Road, Poughkeepsie, New York. And be it further resolved that upon the objection of any member of the town board, an item may be removed from the list and voted on separately. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Resolution 5:18, special consent number 1, 2022. Whereas the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie by Resolution 12:8, number 5 of 2021, and 3:2, special consent number 3 of 2022, authorize a contract and amendments with Mitchell Associates to provide planning and evaluation services regarding the potential purchase of the Poughkeepsie Day School property. And this board did further authorize the supervisor to execute other trade and professional service contracts related to the potential purchase at a cost not to exceed $4,500 per contract. Whereas the town's site and SEQA evaluation process have proceeded, it has become necessary to conduct a cultural resource study, a traffic trip generation analysis, and a potential traffic analysis. Now therefore, be it resolved that the supervisor is authorized to contract on terms otherwise acceptable with Hudson Central Services to conduct a cultural resources evaluation and report for the town as described in its proposed annex at a cost of $4,925 plus additional confirmation tests at $35 per test, and other town-approved additional work at the rate of $115 per hour, and with JMC Planning, Engineering, Landscape, Architectural, and Land Surveying, PLLC, for a trip generation analysis and a traffic analysis, if required, for $2,800 and $6,700 respectively, together with the town's approved additional work at the hourly rates proposed, and whereas the retention of these firms is a Type 2 action requiring no secret review because their work is evaluated and does not commit the town to a specific course of action. And be it further resolved that it is in the best interest of the town, after review of the proposals submitted and consideration of the project timeline, that the retention of these firms not be subject to further procurement process. So moved.
Second.
Got a motion second, any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 6-1.
All right. Be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby authorize the supervisor to sign the 2022 Stop DWI Administrator Amendment and Extension Agreement overtime Stop DWI patrols with the County of Dutchess, a copy of which is attached. CA file number 14284. So moved.
Second.
Got a motion second, any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Be resolved, the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby approve the application submitted by Melissa Myler to hold a block party on James Street, Poughkeepsie, New York, from 18 James Street to 28 James Street on June 25th, 2022, with a rain date of June 26th, from 4 to 10 p.m., and does hereby authorize the Town of Poughkeepsie Police Department Traffic Division to close said street, but allowing access for emergency vehicles from 4 to 10 p.m. And be it further resolved, the Town Board, Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby waive the open container law in the event alcoholic beverages are to be served. So moved.
Second.
Got a motion second, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Be it resolved, the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby approve the application submitted by Felicia Salvatore to hold a block party on Van Wagner Road, Poughkeepsie, New York, from 48 Van Wagner Road to 61 Van Wagner Road on June 25, 2022, with a rain date of June 26, 2022, from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., and does hereby authorize the Town of Poughkeepsie Police Department Traffic Division to close said street, but allowing access for emergency vehicles from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., and be it further resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Poughkeepsie does hereby waive the open container law in the event alcoholic beverages are to be served. So moved.
Second.
Got a motion second. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. SC5 is just a notice of a liquor license for the Mystery Room, 2001 South Road. That brings us to the end of our agenda. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules for any item. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Now is the time for the public to speak, and we ask anybody that wants to speak to please limit to 3 minutes. Is there anybody that would like to speak? Doreen?
Yes, I'd like to speak.
Doreen, go ahead.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
great. Is it Doreen or me?
It's Doreen first and then you, Michelle.
You got it.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
I just make a few brief questions, comments about the short-term rental law, just for your consideration when you're discussing this. I know Mr. Welty said about that unhosted short-term rentals shall only be permitted in the R20 if the lot is a minimum of 1 acre in size, and sort of, it seemed like the implication was, well, you know, that's a lot of space, but it also depends on how the lots are configured. Like, our houses here, like we're a little over an acre, but we're still close to our neighbor. It's just that we have a lot of property in the back, and that's the way the houses, like right through our neighborhood here, are situated on this one side. And then I was just looking on parcel access, and I see that like Mr. Carlos's house is 1 acre, so he would be able to have an unhosted short-term rental, but his neighbor next door, which looks sort of close to me, is looks like it's 0.45 of an acre. So, you know, just I am not quite so sure about that, how that 1 acre works to protect people. And then the only other comment I had about that was about the short-term rentals as far as somebody dwelling there 6 months of the year. So let's say if you lived in Florida 6 months and the other 6 months of the year you're not there, does that mean that the house could be rented out every night of the remaining 6 months? Because that doesn't seem like it would provide a lot of protection to the neighbor. So those are two things that I would like you to consider. And then the only other thing about the agenda item to hire the consultants, as far as the traffic analysis, I also wondered how you'll count as far as the police going in and out of the site, because that's not something where that might be easily, that you can come up with a number of how often that'll happen. So I guess that's something else that's unique to the site that you'll have to take into consideration. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen. Michelle?
Michelle?
Okay, hello, everybody. This is Michelle. Listen, I was so pleased to hear Mike Welty talk about protecting, emerging land issues, and that he did mention telecom facility code review, which is really great. But when I listened to who was on the committee, I was wondering, well, who is the SME? Who's the subject matter expert on RF microwave radiation and mitigation and writing ordinances, in complex waters? And I didn't hear anybody, I don't think anybody from Four Corners is. In fact, I believe they're advocates for wireless proliferation. So, I encourage you to please at least get an expert. I do know of one who's willing to sit for an hour and teleconference and do a presentation for an hour and share ideas about why this absolutely should be done. And so there's that. I have mentioned in the past there are now, way more than 5 communities that have already adopted telecom code that originated at Fishkills, and it was adopted in Woodstock, and it goes on, and this is spreading. But again, without a subject matter expert, you're kind of dealing with, as I mentioned, very complex matters, and unless you sit all day and cut and paste, it might cause Jim Nelson, our attorney, some pause, since he believes that we don't have any, local permission to have any kind of local controls. Please contact me. I'd be glad to reach Paul to do that. Is, I think, 100 an hour. But the other thing is the noise ordinances that are going to be discussed. It is like RF microwave radiation. You want to spare the health of the people sitting in front of the speakers. The speakers as in stereo speakers. There's a difference between pleasant enjoyment and then versus you can't think. I lived with a teenager that loved rock, and it was just, there were times it was really very difficult to even think. So the TCA did not include broadband telecommunications based on the congressional conference reports. They really only legislated to minimal power necessary for the communication, guys, and that meant a phone call. Nowhere in federal law did it include broadband via wireless. Okay, so we can save energy, do the green thing, but you can't do it when we have 10 million times the amount of signal frequency needed to get 5 bars on a cell phone. And that is what we're doing to Poughkeepsie right now. And there absolutely is evidence for health effects. So, Telecom has to now do environmental review based on the 2 lawsuits that they lost. And so the question about music is, and this is one of Paul's ideas, is you have to know where the speaker is, what's the amplification, what's the volume, what's the proximity to people who might not want to hear the music, how far away is it, and the vertical, horizontal, and power levels. And it's just like music, and the industry calls it noise. Telecom industry calls their product noise, especially when there's interference that goes on. So, please get an expert who can be creative or someone who can guide the adoption of what all these other communities have done, because it's going to be rampant
Michelle, can you
extremely
wrap it up?
soon. And that's my wrap up.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Anybody else? And I see no one.
No? Motion to resume the rules?
Second.
All those in favor? Motion
Yeah,
to-
I just wanted to mention a couple things, if you don't mind. Sorry about that. On behalf of really the rec committee, the recreation department, I just want to publicly just thank a couple groups and individuals that did some work around 3 of the parks in the town to beautify them. The one item that was done, Ian Schweiger from the Boy Scouts of America Troop 25, his Eagle project at the Red Oaks Mill Park. He built and installed 2 new park benches along with the perimeter of the tennis court, and refinished one of the old existing benches to make it match and look brand new. So that was done by Ian and his fellow Troop 25 Scouts. The second project that was brought to my attention was the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Local 294, Sean Rosado and his team from UPS Poughkeepsie at Greenville Park. They refurbished the lower level pavilion. They sanded, stained, and painted to give it a fresh new look. They also took it a step further and also refurbished a few picnic tables in the park to match that. And then the last project, the Girl Scout Troops 10145 with leader Ron Rosen at Creekside Park. The Girl Scouts added 75 feet of beautification to the entrance of the Creekside Park by planting a garden with beautiful flowers, shrubs, and mulch. So, I mean, it's nice to see the community step up to, beautify the parks that we have.
Is that the pavilion that's going to be dedicated to Braden? That they
No, that one's going to be in Greenville. It's going to be,
That was one that Teamsters did.
yeah.
Oh, that,
The last
Yeah.
one with the flowers
Oh.
is the
Oh,
one
I meant
across
the-
from.
Sorry,
I
yeah,
meant
the Greenville one is one of them.
yeah, that's all. Sorry about
That's what makes community when you all come
No, it's
together.
good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. Anybody, anything else?
Thanks for recognizing them.
Yeah.
Make a motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor?
All right.